Hello everyone, my name is Shawn. I'm the founder and chief executive officer for the Millennial Institute for Political Awareness and Engagement. Today we have Shawn Haq with us. He's running for Congress in the 34th District of California. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So a little background, Steve was in the Army as an Army intelligence officer. Now he's a reserve JAG Corps member, and he's also a prosecutor at the LA County District Attorney's Office, correct?
Yeah, I'm a felony prosecutor at the LA District Attorney's
Absolutely.
Office.
Great. And one of the things that we talked about right before the interview is, as a prosecutor, you're very uniquely aware of the criminal justice system and, how it works. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is how that informs you on your position on criminal justice reform.
Yeah, criminal justice reform is important for our communities because how we deal with criminal justice affects victims of crimes and also perpetrators of crimes. For victims of crimes, we have to protect our community. We have to make sure families aren't hurt, people who are in a community are not hurt by violent crime, serious crime, but also people who are in the system. They're going to eventually get out of prison, and we need a robust rehabilitation program. Why? Because we need to reintegrate people back into society, just like veterans who come back from war. They've gone through this terrible process where they're not reintegrated. And we've been working on that to reintegrate veterans into a community. But someone who serves in prison did their time for our community in terms of being punished, having time to think about what their actions have caused and harm. But after someone does their time, it's only right that our society welcomes people back and tells a person is a person and has contributions and benefit for our community, and they could continue to live and be part of our society.
Yeah, so we just talked a little bit about the prison side, and I know before the interview we were also talking about, number one, thank you again so much for your service in Afghanistan.
Thanks for your support.
Thank you. We talked about, how the Pentagon's 1033 program that's authorized every year in the NDAA Act takes excessive military equipment and gives it to police officers. What's your position? Like, what would you do to reform or repeal or even keep the 1033 program in place that sends, excess military equipment to police departments all across the country?
So the reason that program first started was because of the North Hollywood shootings here in LA, right? During that time, the LAPD was outgunned by assault weapons. That's one narrow situation where police officers need to have the appropriate weapons. Do they need MRAPs? Do they need SAPI plates on them? No, the best thing for police officers to do in terms of reducing crime, helping our community, is community engagement. Learning about the community, being part of the community, living in the community, working with the community on a day-to-day basis. What does that do? That allows them to get witnesses, get cooperation, get people who are helping and reporting crimes. And what does that do? That helps the prosecution of crimes, right? And when you prosecute crimes and hold people to the law, that reduces the level of crime in a community, and it also encourages people in our community to work together and see the police as an institution that's here to help.
Let's pivot real quick to healthcare. So this morning we got some good news out of DC that House Republicans delayed the vote on the American Health Care Act, and I know you've come out strongly against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Yes. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, very few people think the Affordable Care Act is perfect. A lot of people say that, we should keep most of it, but we should tweak it a bit. Do you support tweaking it? And if so, what types of reforms would you like to make to build on the progress that the Affordable Care Act is?
Okay, first a couple big picture things is that I think the Affordable Care Act is one of the most important pieces of legislation during the Obama presidency. Why? Because it moved the goalposts from 8 years ago when people did not even have health care. People's health care was being cut immediately under surprise situations, and people couldn't afford to even get into healthcare because of pre-existing conditions. So now that conversation has shifted, and he should be really recognized for that achievement. And the fact that people don't like it because it's labeled Obamacare is ridiculous. Like, that's just a ridiculous way to see something that's benefited our entire nation. Second, the Republicans are weak right now. The Republicans are weak, and we as a Democratic Party need to be strong in protecting the things about the ACA that are beneficial to all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, everyone that lives in the country. The things that would change things that are not perfect. We could expand the marketplace, change the artificial borders of the states that limit competition. We could expand Medicare, expand Medi-Cal, so that more people are covered under those programs, under the state programs, and also change the incentives to encourage young people to be part of the insurance pool. So we could have better tax credits, more jobs that provide ACA as a healthcare mechanism, so that more people are in the ACA pool, so that this program that has really changed the lives of Americans, really provided healthcare for so many Americans, continues to prosper, so that it protects our young people and our old people and all Americans across the country.
Okay, great. So competition because of those reducing those state lines, and then you said expanded tax credits to get young, healthy people in the pool. The third thing I wanted to ask you about is what's your opinion on adding a public option to the Affordable Care Act?
I mean, I need to know the nuts and bolts of the public option, who's going to pay for it, what competition mechanisms are in the public option. When you talk about public option, I think of that as the baseline coverage, like in some countries where public option is for everybody, and then everyone else who wants additional coverage could purchase insurance above on top of that. Okay. I would support a system like that, where the public option is one where everyone gets as a bare minimum, and which provides something akin to the list of mandatory coverage options like in the ACA. But if people want faster service or more expensive specific coverage, I mean, I'm all for allowing people to buy that stuff, and also insurance companies to compete in providing that service.
All right, fantastic. Lastly, let's talk about education. I mean, we are here at Cal State LA. Yep. Shout out to Clara. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was there's a lot of things that the Trump administration is doing with education, especially Betsy DeVos. They have big plans, and a lot of Democrats talk about how these plans are bad for us. What do you think is somewhere that we should start? If you get to Congress, what type of legislation will you introduce to benefit public education in the country?
Okay. The first thing about public education is that education is for our young people. And young people is for the next generation. And that's why I see it as so important, because the future of our country is connected with how well we educate and treat and build our young people. First, it doesn't start at preschool. It should start at the very moment that a child is born, that we as a nation provide services for that child. Why is that important? Because if we get tax credits for childcare, that frees up parents to work, parents to make decisions about what's the best way to care for their family and children. Also increases women in the workforce, because the reality of the situation is that women bear the brunt of having to make sacrifices for childcare. I mean, those are important issues for me, and that's why tax credits for childcare should begin at the very beginning. Second, I want an education system that is based on public education. I'm educated in the public school system. Public education allows young people, children, to see the world and see that the world is made up of all kinds of people, and that you learn together and you learn about the world together. And the third thing I would want to do is that I want to encourage service. I want to encourage national service, and in return for national service, that people who commit time 2-3 years after their education, they get college for free, they get college subsidized, some program like that, where there is a guaranteed way after college to know that their debt and their payment for college can be repaid in a sensible, reasonable manner. And with the commitment to service, which is what it's important to me because I served in the military and that's how I paid for college, I want that idea to be expanded for the entire country.
We've seen these past couple of months, we've seen a lot of political activities from millennials, and protesting, knocking on doors, grassroots organizing, even having conversations like this one really sums up the political spirit of our generation. And despite that, we've seen turnout rates in 2016 and even in the 2017 municipal election that haven't been great. What do you propose? What do you think is the best way to turn out millennials to the polls, to get them excited and engaged again in proper governance, and get them engaged in politics?
Okay, so there's a couple couple solutions. One is just a legislative nuts and bolts things. Why are we having elections on Tuesdays? Why don't we have those on Saturdays? Why don't we consolidate the elections? That's will improve turnouts for everybody. Second is that millennials who are just young adults will recognize through the hardships that we're facing now that their actions really matter. And that message of their actions really matter needs to be spread by people like you, people like this organization, people in entertainment, people in sports, people who serve in the military. All of our public figures need to show that those actions by all of us, from the old to the young, really impact how the direction of our country and how we live our lives in the future.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm glad you could make it.
Yeah, thank you.